Good evening and welcome to another episode of Jill and Frank, episode number 36. Unfortunately, we're going to be on and off again with Jill. She's Danny House. Something's going on. I won't get into detail, doesn't matter. But she may join us in and out, or she may join us at a certain point. But either way, for now, for once tonight, I decided to show up a little more prepared. So ahead of the show, I decided to jump on the computer and get some inspiration on some topics. And here's what I came up with. Tonight, I would like to talk about the meaning of suffering, for one. The other one, the meaning of suffering. I think that's an important one, you guys. Like you have to understand suffering is a part of life. And if we try to avoid that, we get ourselves in trouble. It doesn't work. Okay. So, if anything, stay for that, watch that part. Suffering is an important part of spiritual life, sadly, but it is what it is. Now, that ties into our next topic, which is the meaning of transcendence. Now, what if I told you that you can't stop suffering? However, you can have your consciousness transcend suffering. See what I did there? I used it in a sentence. All right, I'm just joking with you guys. I'm just being silly. But here's the deal: what transcendence means at its core is basically getting over something, right? Now we're gonna get into the details as to why that works on a spiritual level and why that's important. Uh, but for now, enough said. The role of compassion in spiritual practice. Um, Now that is super important. Now, compassion. People throw that word around. Compassion. What does it really mean, right? And people I think people make themselves the victims in order to show compassion. And those are not the right things. Like compassion, maybe we'll look at the dictionary definition. I didn't even think about that. Um, but compassion is important. You have to have that connection with other humans, you have to have that connection with the universe, with Source. And that, in part, is what compassion brings you. Now, the role of intuition in spiritual growth. That I'm keeping that one for last because it is the most important. Uh, I'll give you a little hint. Your intuition is the language that your higher self uses to speak to you. Hmm. Yeah, that's deep. Not your guides, not your um, there's different layers of everything, and different systems have different explanations for it anyways, so I'm not going to get into that. That is not one of the topics tonight. We can make it a topic later if you guys would like. Please leave comments if that's what you'd like, but for tonight, that's not what it's about. But we're going to talk about intuition. Now, each of these parts, I want to jump into, and I hope I don't forget. I want to start trying to give you guys a little more practical advice if I can. Things you can do in your everyday life that will help you with certain things, right? So that being said, let's start with uh, our first topic, and let's see if we can make anything practical out of the meaning of suffering. um, so let's start. Actually, you know what? Let's do. Uh, I could have come prepared, but here's what: the meaning of suffering as a dictionary, definition, the Oxford languages. The state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. Weapons that cause unnecessary suffering, right? So, pretty straightforward. That's suffering. In distress, going through hardship, undergoing pain. All right, that doesn't sound fun. So, um, the meaning of suffering then is simply that, going through pain. Now, when we, in terms of bringing this back to our spiritual topic, what is the meaning of suffering in our lives, right? What meaning can suffering take? Do you know anyone truly, I mean, that you can say without a shadow of a doubt that that person does not have any suffering? No, you don't. Nobody does. None of us have no suffering. We have different flavors of it, right? Some may seem easier to someone, some may seem harder, some may seem, and I mean, there's a reason somebody said the grass is always greener, right? It's because that's the way it is. We look at others and we go, "Oh, look, this looks nice." Yeah, but others are presenting themselves in the best of light. So, what does this all mean when it comes to suffering? Well, basically, it means one thing, and the Buddhists said it. I mean, so many different traditions, so many different sources, psychology, uh, everybody, it comes back to the same thing. Life is suffering. There's no way around it. You're not going to get around suffering. You're not going to get, like over it. You're not going to get under it. You're going to get through it, right? Now, here's the deal. When you encounter suffering, one of two things can happen. You start walking through it, and hopefully you walk as fast and as straight as you can through it, right? You take the lessons that are in that suffering, but you do it in the most efficient way. So you know what, here's the deal. Anytime you get through a phase of your life where all of a sudden things start falling apart, everything seems like it's losing its footing, there's a message in there. Something's happening in your life, and you need to learn the lesson. Now, that lesson could take you 20 years to learn. That lesson could also take you, I don't know, 6 months, like depending what it is, right? Obviously, some lessons take a little longer than others. But still, if you come into that suffering and you say, why is this happening? What am I doing? What am I not accepting in my life? What am I not releasing into the universe that is preventing me from moving forward in an unobstructed way? Because I believe this. I believe that if you don't have the wrong attachments, if you don't have attachments to results of over things that you have no control over, if you let go of the things that you actually don't have any control over. And here's some news, people. That is everything but yourself. I mean, you could say you have control even, like I could build a thing, right? I could build a shelter, right? So I have control over that part, right? I don't have to suffer the elements. Well, yes, I do. However, do I have control over the fact that I may hit my hand with the hammer while I'm building it? Do I have control over, so when I start off and I say I'm going to build me a shelter, now, I have a plan, and this road from point A to point B, where I end up with a full shelter, looks a certain way. But here's what life will do to you: life will make that path have to take a whole bunch of zigzags and not go in the straight line that you had envisioned. But that's just how it works, right? And this is why the Buddha said, oh, okay, so life is suffering, right? That's what he discovered. He set out to go end suffering and came back and said, well, there's only one way to end suffering. And that is for each of us to actually accept suffering and to accept our fate in this universe, to accept our role, to accept that we are actually pretty weak creatures when you think about what the universe has in store for us. But we also have the power to create, and that immediately puts us right over everything. But the truth is, humans, when you look at the actual creature, we're pretty fragile, but we're incredible. We have incredible, like fingers and whatnot. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked here. Now, here's the deal. In my life, I've encountered a lot of suffering. Okay. Like I started when I was 2 years old, I was getting beat up by a neighbor. Um, I don't know how I'll ever be able to explain to people what that does to a child. Um, and I mean, by all means, I don't even understand how I made it as far as I did, because truly, when that kind of stuff happens, it leaves a scar, a really deep one. I carried that one for years, right? But um, that suffering, starting from that point, and I mean, I had suffering throughout, going through my teenage years, I was left to my own designs, and I was absolutely not well equipped to go out into the world. I was way too. I could be convinced of things. I was very innocent. I had no idea, and I went out and I basically had to learn to live on my own, and that was one heck of a journey, I'll tell you. It brought me on the streets. It brought me to drugs. It brought me to places that I I I I want to say places I would not wish to my worst enemy, but at the same time, I have to be honest and say I regret none of those places. I regret none of the people I met. I regret none of the experiences I had, because they made me who I am today. And that person, I believe, can bring value to the world. Like, I do believe I have something to share with you guys. I do believe. I mean, look, I took it from that child all the way to this man who has confidence, who will show his boundaries, who will, like, defend them, who will. I mean, I went from 0 to 100, right? And this is what I aim to show you guys, is how to get through your own suffering and how to make it count, because you're gonna get through suffering, right? Now, here's the deal. You're gonna find this absolutely, ridiculous, some of you, but you want to have as much suffering as you can, in a sense, because each time I've suffered something, I'll tell you what, at the other end of the suffering, there was a rainbow, there was a thing, there was something waiting there. There was, when you have that experience, what comes out on the other side is usually a new strength. And that new strength, it's like a video game, for God's sake. I mean, it's literally, you're going through levels and levels and levels, but they all come with more and more and more suffering, not less. As you go forward, you don't start getting less suffering. You just start not reacting to the suffering. You kind of start going through it and going like, oh yeah, that's fine, right? Like, your car breaks down, you get a flat tire, you start walking to, I don't know, get to a garage somewhere. You look back, the car explodes, and you're going like, hey, I guess it was time for a new car, right? Because guess what? Regardless what you do at that point, the car just exploded. You don't have a car. You're walking in the cold, and whatever happens, happens, right? Now, let me tell you something. That was one of the gifts I received from living on the street, right? Now, how do I convey this to people without saying, hey, go live on the streets? Because obviously, I do not recommend it. But sometimes I don't know how to express things to you guys. But anyway, so that's the gist of why I think suffering has a lot of meaning, spiritually. Now, the meaning of transcendence. Now, that's exactly what I'm talking about right here when I say you're gonna start going through the same suffering, but here's what you're gonna do: you are going to transcend the suffering. You're going to transcend the experience of the suffering, the ego experience of the suffering. Because this is what makes suffering so hard, is because we tie it to our ego. All right, I know this is getting a little deeper with the ego because that's a huge topic, but it's important. It brings me, you hear people, I'm going to stop holding my coffee. I won't drink it, obviously. Um, People always talk about the ego death. And even though it is a legitimate name to a legitimate experience, unfortunately, it's been so misused that I hate using that terminology. People think we have to destroy our ego, and it is not. Now, okay, you'll have to forgive me. I always use the stories of the Bible to talk about the ego because, as far as I'm concerned, the meaning of the story of the fallen angel that becomes, Satan, whatever, angel of light, blah, blah, blah. That's our ego. Boom. Um, and so our goal is to bring back the ego at its righteous place. It's not to kill it, to annihilate, yeah, I can't say that word to save my life. It's not to destroy it, right? Our goal is to make the ego go back to being what it used to be, what it should have been all along. Now, there's a reason our ego it took that much room. We had to give it that much room. We tend to be lazy. We automate things. Our brain wants to automate everything. So it decided that our best aspect was our ego because it was the thing that was keeping us safe from, the brontosaurus and the saber tooths and the whatever else. I mean, I know we weren't at the same time as brontosaurus, but um, you know, and so our ego became super important. And I think what happened is we centralized everything around it. And it kept us safe and it kept us good for a long time. And then we went to, because of it, though, when we started civilizing, we went to wars and we did stupid things because they're all ego based things. Now, for some reason, people thousands of years ago knew about this and they spoke about it. They just didn't call it the ego, right? And so they have a beautiful story that describes exactly what happened. Today, we don't need our ego the way we did, right? But we're still being led by it. And so if you look at our behavior right now, it corresponds to everything that was described under that ego, under the devil, if you will, and all the defects of character, if you will, that come with the ego are what are mentioned there. And, anyways, so the point here that I'm trying to make, going really far, is that the goal is to transcend the ego. So the goal is to be able to step out of the ego personality, and then be able to appreciate it from the outside. Now, the one tool that will help the most, I said I would try to make this practical tonight. So here's what. Um, Sadly, it's the one tool I always say, but meditation is the one tool that's going to make this happen for you, right? If you sit in meditation, and I always tell people, don't make it complicated. Start with a breathing meditation. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's the best way to start. You learn to breathe, counting 1, 2, 3, 4 as you breathe in. Hold it 1, 2, 3, 4, and then release 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, and then hold the exhalation. Hold empty 1, 2, 3, 4. So you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I always like kind of make the shape of a square, but now that will actually do a couple of things. It'll one teach you how to breathe better because we all breathe like all day, and that is super unhealthy. So if you learn to just nothing else than 10 minutes a day, go just take any kind of rhythm and breathe rhythmically. Trust me, just that alone will improve your life, right? But if you do it in a rhythmic way and you count and you get your mind involved. Now, you're not trying when you meditate, you're not trying to empty the mind. That'll come sort of by itself, if you will. At first, what you want to do is let the thoughts go. And as they come in, right? Like as you're going like, "Oh my god, did I forget to lock the door?" You kind of go, "It's okay, we'll check after meditation." Okay, and then you let it go. And then it'll, "Oh crap. Did I buy soap? Did I forget? Oh my god, what happened? Oh crap, I'm having a thought again." Okay, well, wait up. Okay, thanks for coming. Bye-bye. And then you let go of the thought. But as you do that, sorry, I ignored you guys. I closed my eyes and, went meditating here for a second. But here's what happens. As you do this, your thoughts kind of, you let them go and you let them go, and they get used to it and you get used to it, and it kind of creates this new balance inside of you. And you start being able to hear your thoughts better on an everyday basis as well. And that's important because now you start being aware that, more than likely, like most of us, unless you grew up in a wonderful family, you probably, tell yourself all kinds of garbage. Like anytime you do something wrong, you might be like, "Oh, for God's sake, you're so stupid." Right? Okay, here you are calling yourself stupid. No, you don't want to do that, right? So you can start seeing your thoughts. You start being more aware of your emotions. You start being more aware of yourself as a general rule. But what ends up happening when all of a sudden those thoughts go quiet and those emotions go quiet? You start hearing this inner voice. You start noticing this part of yourself that you were never aware of before. And that's your inner self. That's the self that is actually above all those things, above the emotions, above. And now you've done your first act of transcendence and you have transcended your thoughts and your emotions. And when you reach that point, now you've opened up a whole lot of possibilities. So I always tell people, first step, learn to meditate, try, do anything. You know what? Like, to be honest with you guys, it took me years before I could say that I had managed to meditate daily for 6 months in a row. Because for me, that had been, somebody had said, that's what you want to attain. I said, you know what? Until I've attained that, I will not rest. And, I would meditate 3 days and then I would forget for a month. I would meditate a week and then forget for 2 weeks. And then it was ridiculous. I mean, but look, I knew that if I learned to do this, somehow I knew there's a lot of things, we'll talk about that someday, but there's a lot of things I knew from a very intuitive level when I was younger. And that led me through my life. But anyways, so I knew to kind of keep going. But when I did, and then later on, I managed to meditate for something like, I think it was a year and a half. I was living in a small bachelor or whatever, and it was just, the environment was good. I was eating right. I was living right. Everything was, things kind of fell into place for that moment in time. And that really was it, the fact that I reached that level brought a lot. And then in my case, I also did a lot of energy work, protection rituals, and a lot of different other elements that brought about other aspects. And then one day we'll talk about it, but I also did a lot of work with the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life and the mystical Kabbalah. So one model of the Tree of Life, I used the model used by the Golden Dawn. Uh, Anyways, so all of that sort of brought me here. But yes, the meaning, like that transcendence, that is what we do each step of the way. We don't, it's like we don't gain anything new ever. We just transcend something old and it allows us to view something more about us. And eventually, what happens, right? Once you see over your thoughts and over your emotions, once you've reached that inner self, that inner self starts being able to listen a little easier to your intuition. Now, we'll talk about that in a moment by the end of the show. So stay put, guys. Don't go anywhere. But the intuition is what's going to start growing inside of you. Now, I should have probably put things in the different order. So I think, nah, I won't. I'll still keep the intuition for last. Now, the role of compassion in spiritual practice. Compassion. It's funny because I think compassion is probably one of the spiritual, I don't know, practices, tenet. I mean, I don't know. I'm French, uh, but it's one of the things that is misunderstood, right? Compassion and forgiveness, both are very misunderstood in the sense that it's like people use them in order to victimize themselves. I know this sounds kind of ridiculous a little bit, but we say, "Oh, I must have compassion," right? Like, I mean, this person beat the crap out of me, but I must show compassion for them. Yes, but no, not the way you intend on showing compassion. Now, showing compassion may be, you know, not going crazy and beating them up. No, but showing compassion will be letting the person, letting someone learn on their own, letting someone understanding the imperfections of another human being, right? Now, even, okay, I'll take a crazy example, and I'll tie a little bit of forgiveness in this. Um, I was, somebody attempted, well, no, somebody did, I guess, sexually abuse me when I was a kid, like a priest in a camp I was at, whatever. And he only offered to touch, and I said, "Uh-uh." But still, that left a scar for me, right? And so when that person in the rest of my life, it was a person I had built anger, resentment, whatever for, because I was like, what the hell, man? Like, seriously, you were supposed to be one of those camp guys that was taking care of us. And it was a priest. Like, it was literally the whole, I mean, anyways. But, and so a lot of hatred was built there, right? Among other hatred for other people and many other situations. But that one was there. Now, when I dealt with the forgiveness part of it, does it make it okay for that person to have done what they did? Of course it doesn't. Does the fact that I have compassion and understanding for who they were and what it may have meant in their life, what was going on in their head, right? Now, the fact that I have this does not mean I'm going to go and become best friends with that person, right? Like, if I ever came across them, if I even knew that it was them, really, I probably wouldn't know. And would I care? Not even. But here's the deal. Um, yes, in order to be able to have to give forgiveness, and not give forgiveness, but really forgiveness is done for ourselves. But in order to forgive, I had to be able to show compassion. I think I had to be able to feel compassion for that person and to be able to say, you know what, they were a suffering person. They were trapped in a world that, why were they in that world? What was their situation that brought them there? I don't know. I don't want to know. Um, but you know what? I have to have compassion for that, right? Does that mean I would ever go in a room with that person? Does that mean, if I knew who they were, I would not have denounced them? Does that mean, I mean, yeah, all of that, right? But also, I'm able to show compassion to that person. And so I believe compassion is important, but it is also abused. We also go, oh, I must show compassion for, my husband that's beating the crap out of me every day. No. Show compassion, yeah, sure, from far. Understand that he's a troubled person after you leave him, right? Like, one does not stop the other from existing. Now, let's go to the big one because I believe that's the most important one of our topics tonight, and that's the role of intuition in spiritual growth, right?
Okay, I'm back and I'm about to have my camera in 1 minute.
Okay, well, we're counting, and we're at the last topic, but the best one. So it's funny you showed up right on time. Um, it's the role of intuition in spiritual growth, and we kind of talked a little bit about it before. We uh,
Push it up.
we brought it up a few times when talking about transcendence, and getting over the ego.
What is this? Not this, my camera. I don't need that. That's not my camera. That stays down there.
So, all right, you guys. Um, so the role of intuition. Okay. Well, once you, like I said, right? Let's assume. Let's start it from we were having this. The intuition was starting to show up. We were having the experience of removing our thoughts and removing ourselves from our thoughts and our emotions, right? Now, from that place, we start feeling our intuition more. Now, we've always felt, I'm sure most of you, you've always felt your intuition. You've always had that thing in that little voice inside, right? Where you go in a situation, somebody wants you to do something, especially when you're younger, right? Somebody wants you to do something, and you're like, oh, this is not going to turn out good. This is not going to turn out good, right? But you kind of do it anyways because your brain is telling you, yeah, but you'll be cool or whatever the case, right? Well, that little voice turns out is always right. And often in our lives, we'll notice it and go, oh, for God's sake, I should have listened to that voice. Why didn't I? It's always right. Well, that voice, as we become more mindful of our thoughts, of our emotion, of our position in the universe in some way, like I know it sounds big, but it's not that big, um, then that little voice, it starts getting louder and louder. And if you're lucky enough to dare listen to it all the time. And this is where it's another topic that was proposed for tonight, and I should have put it on. But if you have a little faith, if you're willing to trust, I'm not asking you trust in a God, trust in a, no, trust in a process of the universe. When I ask you to trust gravity, do you question life and God and the existence of aliens? Or do you just go, if I grab this thing and I drop it, it drops, right? Okay. Well, the universe works a little bit the same way. And so there are laws that just work. So that intuition, that is a connection to your higher self. Now, that has many names, and I suspect it's probably in some ways, in some large ways, very similar to the meaning of your subconscious in a way. But it's more than that. It's more than your subconscious because it has a connection to your soul, it has a connection to much deeper, and you can receive information from it. When I say information, it's when you start on the path, you start at a place where there's one truth, and um, truth is not malleable. But as you get further and further and further along the path, that same truth becomes much more malleable, uh, and so you start being able to experience things of a nature that is beyond our usual truth. So when I say it has truths, um, they're not like useful advice. It is your intuition gives you useful advice nonstop, every day, all day. Just listen to it, right? But once as you do that and as you become in contact, now there are methods by which one can gain access to their higher self, right? Because you can create visualizations, you can create all kinds of methods by which you access and tap into that energy, because it's an energy. Everything is energy. We'll get into that topic. Look, I keep on saying we'll get into that topic. Somebody write the topics for me, because I say that a lot and I don't think I remember most of them. So, but, um, so yeah, so the role of intuition. Now, once you start being able to tap into that intuition, something will happen, and it will require a lot of faith. But because you're tapped in, you can actually sort of let life take over. You can fully abandon and go, okay, cool. So where are we going now? Now, it's funny because life will have ups and downs and moments that go well and moments that don't. And the weird part is the moments that go well and where things happen mysteriously at the last minute sometimes, and in weird ways, but always happens, is when you trust and when you have faith. And the minute you stop doing that, all of a sudden things are going to start, you're going to hit walls, you're going to, and it's like the saying says, right? Like, go with the flow. Well, at a universal level, that is exactly what you want to do. Exactly. It's just you got to learn to perceive the flow. Learn to, once you see the waves, once you see the I mean, trust me, I'm not talking about, actually seeing waves, though that could be part of it. Trust me, that, like, once you get into visualizing stuff, once you get into using the power of your imagination, the power of your creativity, the power of um, your magic, once you start using your magic, that's what it is, really. What you can accomplish is incredible. Now, here's the thing: humans use our magic all the time. We use our power to create all the time. We're just unaware. If you watch everything that's going on in the world right now, and you watch every Hollywood movie in the last 50 years, well, what you'll notice is that we're going through uh, almost every scenario written all at the same time, at once. And it's funny because the reason I believe that's happening is because we have the power to create. And so we created an alternate universe. We created a way where the story goes. And now we're going through it because we created it, right? When people talk about the law of attraction, and I know sometimes the law of attraction gets a bad rep because it gets oversimplified. It gets people go like, oh, if you think you're going to be happy, you're going to be happy, which in essence is true, right? But if you say, I will visualize myself with a job and sit on my ass, you're not going to get a job, right? You have to your body, your emotions, your thoughts, every part of you. This is how a magical operation is done. You need every part of you to be in sync with your goal, right? Now, it's also basic life. So magic, basic life, same thing. Um, Now you send all that energy in that direction, but you also take the steps to get a job. You apply places. You Now, as you're applying, let's say you're using magic. Let's say you're using that power of attraction, and you're visualizing and you're doing all this stuff that's sending energy. Energy tends to gravitate towards similar energy, a little bit like everything else. Um, and so it will kind of find each other. Now, so goes the theory, anyways. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I believe I sort of perceive that on some level. But hey, maybe I'm just crazy. Who knows? But what ends up happening is you're now creating a situation where maybe you wouldn't have seen the ad in the newspaper for that. Okay, I'm old. The ad online for that job, that's gonna end up being your job. Why? Because you weren't thinking in that direction. You weren't feeling in that direction. You weren't investing yourself in that direction. But if you're sitting on your couch with Cheetos on your chest and going like, I want to have a job. I'm going to visualize myself with a job, and you keep on eating the Cheetos, it's not going to work. I have nothing against Cheetos or people watching TV. But you know what I mean, guys? Like if you want, like, immerse yourself in what it is you want to accomplish, and you'll accomplish it. Like, definitely. You may fail 3 4 times, fall on your face, get back up, take off the dust, keep going, but you'll get there, right? Now, yeah, some people will say, no, you can't accomplish everything you want to. Somebody with no leg may not run a marathon. Now, that being said, people with no legs are running marathons faster than people with legs these days. So careful what you say, right? We said that for years. Oh, you can't ask a guy without legs to run a mile. Well, guess what? They run it faster than the other guy now. So hey, maybe you can, right? Maybe we're capable of a lot of things. Yes, we are creators in many, many levels. And that's what that means. And that intuition. Now, here's what I'm going to bring you a little bit down a crazy rabbit hole here. This is my own belief a little bit. There's a thing, it's called the law of Thelema. It's a thing that magicians have. It started with Aleister Crowley writing a book, the Book of the Law. And the gist of it, the main important part that I take out of all of it, is the main tenet of that law, which is do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Now, all that says, do what thou wilt. Unfortunately, even people that have read that crap and studied it, some of them still act like it said, do what you want, which it isn't. Your will is, and this is where we tie into our topic, your will is what that higher self knows that you're supposed to be doing on your path right now. And so the goal of that entire law says, basically, find out what your will is, get in contact with your higher self. Like, that's priority number one. That's what we should be teaching children. I mean, that's what we should be teaching every human. Well, maybe not children. It's a little, but the minute they become adults or at a certain age, teach people about themselves, teach people about their powers and how to use them and how to, you know, and how to reach their higher power. So, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. So basically, if you know that you're on your true path, that's it. That's it. Anybody tries to stop you, no, you're doing the right thing because you're following your path. Anybody in your way, you go, sorry, but can you move? Um, Love is the law, love under will. So, love everybody. Obviously, that's always been the number one rule, the most important rule, and the one that magicians tend to forget out of this whole thing. They're looking for communication with their higher self and or guardian angel. There's different names for the process, but I like higher self because it represents truly, I find, what it is, which is a yeah. Anyways, anybody that gets there will know it can be both are very fitting, so I don't know which one to give you, but higher self is the one I use, so be it. But once you gain that, you have sort of a certainty about life, not an absolute certainty. That never, I don't think that ever happens. But you have a certainty where even if you make mistakes, it's okay. It's you can make mistakes with certainty. I guess that's one way to put it, right? um, because now you walk through the world with the ability to, one, see the lessons and learn from them fast. Number two, see the suffering and not let it take you down. Number three, see the challenges and accept them or leave them. Once you're able to recognize, I call them the building blocks, right? My own thing, my jam, it's called the boundless mind. And the reason I called it that is because for me, that's what it is. It's about removing all the little walls that we have in our little world, in our little universe, and allowing ourselves to go different directions than we normally would. So, if I believe something today, allow myself to challenge that and to say, what would happen if I believed the exact opposite tomorrow? When you encounter people, do you, if you have a divergence of opinion, do you immediately enter a fight where you have to show that your side is right? Or do you stop and say, hey, here's what, for the next 20 minutes, tell me what you think. And then from what you tell me, I'll tell you where I stand. You're the very few if you do that. Not a whole lot of people do that. And that is a skill, right? Now, I talk a lot. I don't always manage to do it well. I'm learning. That's the reason my altar has a little baby Buddha on it, um, because I'm learning to listen with the, what could I call it? With the amazement of a child, right? If you can listen to others with the amazement of a child, um, yeah, you're going to go through life and you're going to discover amazing things. Here's a wonderful experience. If you've never done that and you're young enough to do it, if you're not an old folk like me, um, if you get a chance to go volunteer with old people, to go anywhere, any room where you'll find a large amount of old people, go hang out there every so often. But as you do, go there in the spirit of asking them what it is that they take with them to the grave. I know that sounds a little, what the heck? But go ask them, what do you remember most of your life? What was important? What do you regret? Um, what is the one lesson you would give me if you could give me one? Now, some of them are going to be totally outdated because, yeah, things are moving so fast right now that, yeah, a lot of it is not going to be. But here's what's going to be not outdated, I believe, because when I was a kid, I did that. For some reason, on my mom's side, there was a whole bunch of old people and they were all dying one after the other. And so I would continuously end up at a funeral home with a whole bunch of old people. And since I didn't have a whole lot of role models in my life, and I felt I was left to discover life on my own, well, I decided to go see groups of those old people and say, hey, tell me about back in your day. Tell me what's important. Tell me what to remember. Tell me, if there's one lesson you're going to give me to go through life and survive, what is it going to be, right? And the answers I got from those people were unbelievable. I mean, I'll tell you what, not one of them mentioned their work. That's for sure, right? They mentioned the people. And some of them, I mean, many of them, mentioned the people in their lives with tears in their eyes. Sometimes it was tears of happiness, sometimes it was tears of sadness, but they all had beautiful stories about their children, their grandchildren. They would look at me, right? I was probably 7 at the time, like I was in those ages. They would look at me and say, oh, I have a grandchild your age, and they would tell me the most amazing stories. I learned a lot from that, and I recommend anybody does that. I recommend anybody, go try that. Go spend some time with old people and learn from them. Learn what they remember from life, what they miss. I'll tell you, a lot of them, it's probably their children. They probably wish they could see their children more often. If you've got parents and you're listening, hey, might be worth giving them a call. I sucked at it, so I'm not giving you a lesson. I really sucked at calling my parents, but if you're better than me, then good for you. Um, so let me see. I'm in the mood to keep on going with you guys tonight there, and so I'm gonna look at what else. The importance of self-reflection. How about self-reflection and self-responsibility? It's incredible. People, I mean, I don't know why I'm so sensitive to it, but I'm very sensitive to people that constantly come and tell me what others are doing wrong in their life. And don't get me wrong, I have gone and dumped that exact way on more people that can be counted. And I mean, I don't know. I think somebody in the program, right? I came in and went to Narcotics Anonymous, and I had a sponsor, and one of my sponsors, I think, was what got me. Um, what got me through that. Anyways, so the importance of self-reflection, right? Like you learning to say, hey, what's happening with me right now? What part am I? Everybody's able to come in and say, look, my wife did this, my husband did that, my brother did blah blah blah. Everybody else in their life did everything, and poor them, and so on and so forth. Now, that's what that yeah, that's where I was going. That's what that guy taught me, my sponsor, was to take responsibility for that. It's not the others that are responsible for my life, it's me. So he would not listen to me when I showed up. I'd show up, and I was going through hell with one of my girlfriends at that time and whatever, and I'd show up and I'd be like, oh my god, you won't believe what she did, blah, blah, and he would walk away, and I was like, no, what is he doing? And I felt like, oh my god, that guy's such an a-hole. And one of my buddies that was really close to me, that would watch the interactions, he was like, Frank, I don't think you realize what's going on. And I said, no, I don't, because I feel really rejected by the guy. And he said, well, it's because every single time he goes away like that, it's because you're not talking about you. He wants to know how you're doing. And I was like, well, I'm telling him how I'm doing. Like, this is what I'm going through in life. And he was like, no, you're telling him how XYZ is doing. And that was at that moment, I kind of had a small seed of a realization. Um, but it flourished into something else later on in life. And that brought me to doing self reflection and doing, because it's more important to look at our part, right? So now, when I would start talking to him, I didn't know how, but I would start going, okay, well, here's what I'm doing, and then I would run out of things to say, because my entire life was dependent on how my girlfriend was responding to me, or how. And it was like, I mean, I was a very codependent person, whatever. Like, there was a lot to work there, to begin with. But in that context, anyways, like, the whole point is that, um what I learned was to not look at what she was doing, not look at what other people are doing in the situation, but to look at what I'm doing. Now, years later, one of the things I know is that what was I doing in that situation is I was remaining in a relationship that I had no business being in, right? Now, had I looked at my part at that point, if I had learned that as a behavior when I was younger, if somebody had said, hey, always look at your part, always look at what you control in that situation, I might have left years before. Things might have turned very different, right? And so I think that's what I'm attempting to get to you guys, is that self reflection. Always look, what's my part? What can I change? Right? And it sometimes will feel like a loss. Sometimes the one thing you can change, right? Like, let's say, I don't know, you're involved in some crazy court battle. It's draining all the money you have. I don't know, your wife is about to leave you. Your children are miserable. I don't know, right? You've invested everything. And at this point, you're so involved and it's all becoming a big ego thing, right? And um, yeah, maybe it's time to go, wait a minute, like, is this, maybe the decision might not be the one where you win. Sometimes the decision will be the one where you lose, and you'll go, you know what, I'm going to lose this fight because it's going to save me from losing way more. It's going to make me win on other fronts, right? And so, being able to look at yourself and do some self reflection and to say, all right, am I truly giving my best in this situation? Am I truly doing the right thing? Uh, I think that's a very important thing. And if you want to journal about it, that's an even better thing. That's another tool that you can use. Um, yeah, and please share, subscribe. That's Jill just helping us there for a moment. She managed to jump in and give us a little bit of a hand on the technical side. Are you going to be managing to join us, Jill?
I'm having
Jill?
some serious technical difficulties. My camera's not on my screens. It's not working. Oh, and I guess you can't hear me. You
I
hear me?
can now. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, now I can't. You
Oh,
just muted yourself. Oh, wait up.
okay. You hear
Okay, there
me?
you are. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because you couldn't hear me. I said I'm here,
No.
but I'm having serious technical difficulties. I got both phones working, but I have one screen not working, and I have no camera. But I am here in spirit.
Well, that's what counts. I mean, all right, so let's talk about spirit. We have Jill in spirit. Well, really, you're coming in at 58 minutes. So I mean, I've covered all four
I've
topics
been here
and
on
brought
and
another
off.
one. I brought in another
I've been
topic.
trying to make my screen work. I wanted to come in on camera, but I couldn't make it happen.
I want to talk about prayer. Is that cool?
Okay. Uh-huh.
Okay. Just because you hear of prayer, and you always, the minute you hear of prayer, you immediately navigate to the big religions, right? You go, okay,
Mhm.
so Muslim, Christians, like all those guys, they pray. And then all the spiritual people, kind of, not all, but some spiritual people, they kind of go, well, yeah, that's, no, that's the religion stuff. And it's like, well, wait a minute, no. Like, you don't have to have a particular religion to pray. Now,
Right.
what is a prayer? It's similar to a mantra, right? It's not dissimilar because you can be using it as a mantra. I have a prayer that I use as a mantra, and it basically says that, I won't take from the universe, but I will try to give to the universe, right? Try to
Mhm.
give to humanity. um, and it's an important prayer for me, right? Because it sets the tone for what I want my life to be. um, and so in that respect, well, that's one power of prayer, right? Is to
Well,
if
people
you
can refer to prayer as different things. Like not
Mhm.
everybody does mantras. Some people consider it just, talking to your source.
Well, that too.
That's how I consider it. So I think it's who for each for his own. If it feels right to the person,
Well, yeah, of course, that's always. But that's the thing, right? Like praying, how would you pray, right?
I would pray by talking
Okay.
personally. Just
About the weather.
but the thing is, no, just about life in general. Like
Hmm.
basically talking in my head. Like not like so basically talking to myself. Like so I consider that my prayer. praying to my higher self, talking myself out of things, in the things, thinking through things. That's how I pray. I don't like go and pray like rosary or Hail Mary or stuff like, you
No,
know.
no, and nor does it. I mean, those types of prayers are also, they have their benefit, but what you're talking about is, and that's actually what Jesus describes as well. Some of it, anyways. Like what it is, for me, it's a way to get closer to God. Right? It's just, it can be an ongoing conversation, like you say, right? Like where you're just kind of, it's like, oh, okay, well, all right, we'll try to do better on this, or we'll try to, and you kind of have your own sort of description of what that thing listening might be or whatever, right? And but that alone has power. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, stop that, remove that from your life, and all of a sudden, well, that's not there. Like, there's a power in it. Whether, again, you use a prayer as a mantra, you take prayer that's existing, or you write one for yourself, or that constant communication with, because it's not just communicating with a higher self, or a divinity, or whatever it is that will work for you. um, it's the awareness of it, right? I was saying earlier in the like, um, we don't question gravity, right? Gravity, you say, okay, it falls. I drop something, it falls. That's just it, right? But we question other laws of the universe. We go, well, no, that couldn't work, right? And it's like, yeah, no, that works. And so those things, they just, they work. They don't. Um, yeah, you can kind of rely on it. And do you know what I mean with that? Like, it will have an impact. It's a given. If you do certain things, they'll help you. Uh, and I think people don't realize that. Like, a lot of those things were given to us as just means of attaining a certain state where we
Mhm.
trust. Right? We talk about faith. Like, yeah, that's what we need to. You need to learn the faith. It's not in a thing. It's not in a being. It's not a dude on a throne. It's not a. The faith is in a process. The faith is the same faith you have in gravity. It is the faith that if you send out an intention, something comes back. It's faith that if you align yourself with where the universe is trying to send you, that you're going the right place, and that it will lead you exactly where you need to go. And those are all signs of God. People say, God, give me a sign. You know what? He probably gave you five in the last half hour. Just listen to them. Um, because think of the world as a white canvas, and then we show up. So there is the existence of the canvas, which is, objective reality, but is really white and it's really bland. And then everything else is what we paint on the canvas, each and every one of us. So yes, we're all looking at the same canvas, but we're all covering it with a whole bunch of different stuff. It's almost like a green screen in a movie,
Mhm.
right? Like, we're just projecting. And that's what we do. We project. So everything is a sign, because everything is a mirror of yourself, is a mirror of your own existence. And being a mirror of your own existence, it becomes a mirror of the world. Now, that's something I think at first you kind of have to take to faith a little bit. The as above, so below concept. The fact that the infinitely small and the infinitely large are the same thing. Um, like that. At first, I think you have to just sort of take a little bit of a leap of faith on that one. But once you start using it and you start seeing it, it start taking shape and making more sense. Do you know what I mean? Or am I
I
making
know what you
completely no
mean.
sense? Um, so yeah, so that's my 2 cents on this. And love, people, love. I can't overstate that one. I don't get why people don't understand this. Look, again, we're gonna say the world is a mirror. Therefore, love. Just love. Love everything. Love everybody. Have gratitude. Learn to have gratitude. Learn to love people. Learn to love yourself. And guess what? You'll feel grateful. You'll feel loved. You'll feel happy. You'll feel all those things. Even though you'll still be going through the mountain of suffering that we were talking about earlier. Now, furthermore, because you're able to love yourself and to love the world and to love the universe and have the universe love you back, guess what? You'll be going through bigger piles than the average person. Why? Because you're capable of it. And because being capable of it, you're also capable of going through the kinds of suffering that will allow you to reach the next level of consciousness. And that is something we have to be thankful for, not something we have to shun, right? Um, I'll use empaths because I often use them as an example because I identify as an empath. Um, and I don't even know what example I was going to use, anyways. So never mind. That probably means it's time for the show to reach its conclusion, I think. Um, so listen, guys. Once again, thank you enormously for joining me tonight. Uh, this was fun as usual. I always enjoy coming and talking to you guys. Please bring some topics we can talk about. Share,
Oh,
I mean, share the live. Yeah, go
speaking
on,
of
Jill.
topics, I don't know if next week we're gonna. I have the recording edited of the the pre-recorded with Pamela Jones.
Okay, cool. So we
I
could play
don't
the
know if you
interview.
want to do that next week or if you wanted to just air that as an extra. I wasn't sure what you
Mhm.
wanted to do.
Well, we'll do it next week so we can advertise it and say, like this is what's, and so we'll play it. So if you guys, we're trying something. If we can manage to have guests or whatever, because we had some technical problems, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pre-record interviews with the guests, right? And
Right.
so on some weeks, if we have pre-interviews from guests, then we're going to throw them into the show, and so we'll be doing a little bit of the show beforehand and then showing the guests, possibly possibly not commenting on it at the same
Mhm.
time, but I don't think we should, probably, if it's our own interview. So we'll play the interview and then we'll come back, maybe a few
And comment on
comments,
it. Yeah.
whatever, and then continue on with the show. Let
And
us know what you think
also
of that. You know.
so just to get a little more excitement out there, we are getting a little bigger cuz we also have another scheduled guest coming for possibly the week after that. I don't want to get jumped too far ahead, but um
Okay.
we'll
Oh,
throw that out there. So
all
some
right.
exciting things to come for the future.
That sounds fun. That sounds excellent. All right. Well, hey guys. Once again, thank you very much for joining us. If you're one of our usuals chiming in, thanks for following us. I know we know who some of you are, at least. We appreciate it. We always like when we see your name, when we see you guys in the chat, when you interact with us, and we always think about you. Even the rest of the time, trying to think up of things we can do, we can say. Now, once again, we will see you next week. There's a possibility as well. I don't want to jump the gun too fast, but in the next month or so, there's a possibility that we may be able to fix our little problem with having two different nights on each week's. We may be able to move to one same night every week, because I know that would make a lot more sense to most people.
Yeah.
So now that we've done all the administrative side, I guess the last part is just please subscribe, like, share, do anything you can, please. We're trying to get bigger. We have a lot to say. We want to interact with people. We want to, hey, we want to get out there and try to help. So help us do that. So on that, I guess I'll say goodbye to you guys.
All right. Good night, everyone.